Sometimes I get accused of being lazy and looking for shortcuts, which is fair, but also I sometimes get told that I unnecessarily overcomplicate things, which is somehow also true. The real magic happens when I manage to combine both of those things into one project, trying to find the easy shortcut and then adding a level of complexity that entirely eliminates the advantage of taking the shortcut in the first place. Today is one of those days. I need to make a handful of flat fiberglass sheets. Nothing fancy, just flat sheets. And I did eventually find a good way to do this. Eventually. Life is filled with unknown unknowns, things that you don't know that you don't know. I like to dive headfirst into projects because it's often the best way to find out all the hidden truths. It's harder when you're trying to find out what's going on in the world, and ground news is a good way to find out what you didn't know that you didn't know. Ground news gathers related articles from news sources around the world and gives you context about the source of that information, their political bias, the reliability of their reporting, and who owns them, all backed by 3 independent news monitoring organizations. News sources are hiding things from you, not necessarily on purpose, perhaps just a consequence of their own bias or their perceived audience, but if you want to find out what a whole slew of news outlets are glossing over, you can do that on ground news with one click. Right here, the blind spot. Take a look at this article on anti-satellite weapons. It has 13 total sources, and the only 2 leaning left are from China, so if your news mostly comes from the left, you might not even know that Russia is possibly going full-on James Bond moonraker. Ground News has about 20 of these blind spot stories every day. Are you in a bubble? Find out. Go to ground.news/Superfast Matt to spot media bias and become a smarter news consumer. Subscribe through my link for 40% off unlimited access this month. I've broken up my race car body into several different parts. The engine cover, this part I'm calling the diaper, this stuff up here, and then this middle lower section that I'm calling the taco. The taco is made of 6 parts, all flat. They each have aluminum strips that will be bonded in to aid attaching them to the car, and I have templates for the wheel cutouts that will go in the bottom 2 pieces, but that's as complex as they get. Mostly they're just simple, flat parts. It's weirdly expensive to buy flat panels of fiberglass, so I just decided to make them myself. Presumably this will be super easy, the parts will all come out nicely, and we will not almost set the garage on fire. We needed a flat surface to start with, so I took my 2 tables and leveled them out with some 3D printed spacers. I have this 4x8 sheet of acrylic that's been sitting in my backyard for about a year, so we chopped off about 2 feet from one side to use as the flat surface. It had a film on it that we tried to peel off, but since it had been baking in the sun for over a year, it didn't want to come off cleanly, so we just gave up and left it on there. It's probably fine. Here's how we're going to do this. We're making these 6 parts, and we're going to start with this one. This is the lower rear part of the body. It's flat, except for the cutout for the wheels, and it has 6 metal strips bonded in to help attach it to the car frame. The straightforward way to do this would be to just lay down some fiberglass, paint on some resin, and then when it's cured, cut out the final shape, and then use some adhesive to bond in the rails. But we're going to make this way more simple by making it way more complicated. Here's the plan. First, we're going to completely reorganize the garage. Why? I don't know. It just seemed like a good time to do that. Then we will lay out a perimeter of some straight edges using, say, aluminum bar stock. We'll attach that to the table using some double-sided tape. Then we can coat the whole thing in some release film, carefully trimming the edges so that they nestle into the aluminum frame. This gives us a perfect rectangle that is exactly the right size that we need, so no trimming is needed. As for the wheel openings, I had my friends over at Send Cut Send laser cut out some chipboard with the right size cutouts. We'll just leave this in the layup, and that'll be our trimming template to cut out the wheel openings after we're done. We chopped the fiberglass to exactly the right size so it would neatly fit down into our little rectangular cavity. About this time, we realized that our rectangular cavity was noticeably bigger than our carefully cut fiberglass pieces. This is weird because I used my giant calipers to get the exact correct... Oh, I know what happened. These calipers have a dimension for inside, as in you're measuring the inside of something, and outside, as in you're measuring the outside of something, but I always read it as inside being the inside of the calipers, and outside being the outside, which is wrong. So, we had to fix the rectangle. Slight issue, and surely our last problem. Since we're being fancy with the rectangular perimeter mold, we also decided to get fancy with the aluminum strips. Rather than bonding them on later, we just decided to put them in the fiberglass. I thought about putting them on top, but I figured why not stick them between 2 plies of fiberglass so they're securely in the part and will never come out. Also, further complicating this simple method, we decided to do a vacuum infusion. The advantage of this method is that it's usually a lot less messy and you get a really good fiber to resin ratio, so you don't have extra resin making your part unnecessarily heavy. To do this, you completely seal up your part in a bag, you pull a vacuum somewhere, we chose the middle, and you suck resin in from somewhere else, we chose the two ends. It's important that you don't have a leak here, so pull down the vacuum and check for leaks. Plug any leaks with this funky tape, and you're good to go. Mix the resin thoroughly, clamp your hose to the side of the resin bucket, and start sucking. For this, you might want to use a resin that is specifically made for vacuum infusions, like this. This stuff is a lot thinner and flows easier. If you use regular resin, it might move so slowly that it starts to cure before it gets to the vacuum port, which would be bad, and then you'd have to find some clever ways to get resin into a half-cured fiberglass part. But not this time. This time it worked. We did have a few air leaks spring up, but we plugged those up with some tape and called it a day. Alright, so you know that infusion resin I got that flows really well? While the part was curing, I decided to read the instructions, after we already started doing this. This stuff requires a post-cure. It mostly hardens at room temperature, but you're supposed to bake it at 180 degrees the next day, and I don't have an oven that can fit something this size. Wait a minute, yes I do. Well, kind of. I have an oven that can fit half of this thing. So I baked it half sticking out of an oven for a few hours, then I flipped it around and baked the other side. So you could definitely call this part half-baked. After that, we peeled off the peel ply and saw that the part was not 100% great. There were a lot of dry areas from where air got into the bag as it was curing, especially around the aluminum bars. There was a lot of bridging because we didn't tuck the fiberglass into the corners and we didn't have enough resin to wet it out. Should have seen this one coming. I can probably fill a syringe with resin and fix these parts, but the sides are another issue. The metal bars that closed in our square were too tall, and so air got into a couple of the corners, and it doesn't look good. It's definitely not the hard, solid edge I was hoping for. Perhaps we got too fancy with this one, trying to avoid cutting it by boxing it in and adding the aluminum bars inside the fiberglass. We will learn and simplify next time. So we have one piece done of 6, and honestly we might have to remake that one, so we have made little progress. For now, we're going to make these 2 side pieces, but we're not going to use the perimeter aluminum like last time, and we're not going to lay it up with the aluminum in the part. We'll cut out the final piece from a slightly larger piece, and we will bond in the aluminum with some adhesive later. So we're just making a flat piece. How hard could it be? Since we're making a flat piece and cutting out the part later, we decided to just lay up both side pieces at once in one larger part. We did everything similar to the last time except no aluminum, just fiberglass inside a vacuum bag top. We also decided to use regular non-infusion resin since I didn't want to have to do that half-baked idea again. We were worried it would go too slow, but at first it was doing great, moving towards the vacuum port in the middle. We measured its speed and calculated that it would be done in about half an hour. Half an hour later, it was not even close. The resin started to flow really slowly, and we were afraid it wasn't going to make it to the middle. So we did something risky. We cut slits into the tape around the side and added 4 extra tubes to pull in more resin closer to the middle. And this worked pretty well, actually. We just kept mixing resin and letting it flow into the part until Dave noticed something odd.
Oh, this is smoking.
I'm not sure why. Perhaps I accidentally mixed in too much hardener in the last batch, but the resin was going into thermal runaway. Sometimes when this happens, it can start a fire, which I did not want in my garage at this particular moment. Unfortunately, we had taped the buckets down so they wouldn't fall over, so we had to peel off the incredibly hot buckets, and we definitely should have taken a moment to grab some gloves for this. We set the buckets outside where they could think about what they had done. The rest of the infusion went relatively well, except that there were a couple of dry spots. I marked them to see if we could get any movement, but there was none. So I filled a syringe with some resin and took care of it myself. This part came out better. Still not perfect. There were some dry spots, some wrinkles, some dog hair. But I think we can make a usable part out of this. We're getting better. Let's try this a third time. Okay, so we've learned some lessons. I've already forgotten most of them, but we did learn them. So now, armed with our new knowledge, we are going to try to make 2 more side pieces. Again, simple, flat piece, nothing fancy. But this time we're going to make sure we can fully infuse the part before it starts to cure, and we're going to do that by having the shortest path for the resin to flow. We're going to feed in the resin all along one of the long edges, and we're going to pull vacuum from 5 separate spots along the other long edge. This gives us only 1 bucket of resin to worry about refilling and also possibly bursting into flames, and it gives us a much shorter overall path. Again, at first, it went great. The resin was moving fast, crawling along one edge and making its way to the other side. We did still have a fair amount of bubbles. Ideally, you would mix the resin and then use a vacuum chamber to suck out the bubbles. But our vacuum chamber was busy sucking resin through the part, so we just had some bubbles being sucked in. After a while, though, the sucking slowed down and then pretty much stopped, and we were not at the end yet. Not even close. I figured we could swap one of the vacuum ports to a resin port, plugging that part of the vacuum hose and running a new hose into the bucket of resin at that location. That helped a little bit, but not a ton. While this was going on, I decided to double check the temperature of the resin buckets to make sure everything was reasonable. One was at 70 degrees, then later at 75 degrees, then a few minutes later at 286 degrees. So we moved that one outside. Not sure why we're getting random super high temperature resin, except that I am being a little sloppy with measuring the resin and hardener. More importantly, our infusion was no longer infusing, so we mixed a little more resin and busted out the syringes. This one came out maybe a little worse than the one before. We had a dry spot here we couldn't get to wet out. It seems fully resonated on the surface, but the middle is definitely dry. We might still be able to make this one work by trimming this part out carefully, but overall we are doing pretty poorly in trying to make the simplest possible fiberglass shape. This is the final flat part that we need to make, assuming we don't have to remake some of the other parts, which we almost certainly do. And this time, we're going to apply the lessons we've learned. Not lessons on proper vacuum bagging, not lessons on bridging and adding parts into the layup. This time, we're going to apply the lesson that simple is good, less is more. We are going to do this the easiest possible way. We're going to lay out fiberglass, get the easy, inexpensive polyester resin, and we're just going to brush it on. No vacuum, no complexities, just the easy way. I grabbed some of this polyester resin from the local auto parts store, and pretty much immediately we noticed an issue. The lid wouldn't come off easily, which is a problem when using a can of resin that's previously been opened. But this one is brand new, or it's supposed to be. Could be just really old. We got it open with the help of some pliers and noticed the second issue. It was black. Like motor oil black. It's been a while since I've used Bondo fiberglass resin, at least 10 years, so maybe I misremember the color, or maybe they changed it. It smelled like resin. Mostly. We decided to give it a go on this relatively cheap piece of fiberglass, seeing if it was maybe fine. It was not. Something was wrong. I thought I remembered that you had to pierce these hardener bottles with a pin before you use them, and the one we used was already pierced. We stood there looking at this oil black fiberglass with resin that was clearly not hardening. It was definitely not resin. Now, this sounds insane, but here's what I think happened. Somebody bought this gallon from the hardware store, used most of it, then refilled the hardener bottles with water, and then refilled the resin can with, best I can tell, motor oil. And then they returned it to the auto parts store in the most egregious bit of white trash ingenuity I've seen since I moved out of Oklahoma. Bold. We took it back to the store where the guy behind the counter was skeptical, which I would be too, but he did give me a refund. We went to a different auto parts store and got another can of resin, this time checking to make sure the hardener wasn't already opened. So, try number 4 and we've already screwed up the layup, but this time it was not my fault. We mopped up the oil that was on the table. Fortunately, a few weeks ago, New Pig was nice enough to send me a load of cleaning supplies, including some oil-absorbent mats, which are made to clean up this exact thing. Not this exact thing, but, kind of this thing. They also sent some rolls of absorbent mat, which we laid down to keep dripping resin or possibly oil off of the floor. Anyway, shout out to Pig. If you need some shop cleaning supplies, check them out. With a freshly cleaned table and a new can of actual fiberglass resin, we gave it another go, wetting out a clean sheet of fiberglass mat, and then 3 more layers of woven fiberglass. This time the resin was the right color, the right consistency, and it smelled a lot like polyester resin. We finished it off with a layer of peel ply. This will give a nice surface to bond the aluminum to using some high-strength adhesive at a later date. And the next day, it looked great. Still needs a trim and some work, but there you go. If you want to make a flat piece of fiberglass, don't get fancy. Just do the simplest way possible. Also, don't get your resin from the auto parts store. If you're not up to speed, I've decided to sticker bomb my land speed car with your stickers. There is one rule. You send me a sticker, flat in an envelope, and I will put it on the car. A lot of people had trouble with this rule. There's really 3 parts to it. A sticker, flat, in an envelope. A sticker is one sticker, and lots of you sent several stickers, which is fine. I will guarantee that one of those stickers goes on the car, and I might put the rest on there too. Probably not going to put all of the I Heart Penis stickers on the car, and I'm definitely not adding an entire roll of for rectal use only stickers. Or a second roll of for rectal use only stickers. Stickers are also supposed to be flat in an envelope. I got a few rolled up stickers, including some plaid and 40 square feet of wood grain. I will put some of both of these on the car, but definitely not all of them. Also, envelope, I did not specify a standard number 10 envelope, and some of you took advantage of that. That's fine. I will put your oversized sticker on the car. but don't push it. I did have a kind of unwritten rule about not sending in political stickers, but I have to say, one of my favorite stickers is a political sticker. I love it when people break the rules in just the right way. There were some excellent bribes, including $100 and a fake $100, and also this awesome $1 bill with a Superfast George Washington. Shout out to the guy who sent in a 1 penny bribe. I got letters from all around the world, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Europe, and I'm a little disappointed that I didn't get any funny looking money as a bribe. But there is still time. I also got some stuff that you could call marketing. Lots of these cool rock light bars from LFG Automotive. I got some coffee from Chromatic, but there was no sticker in there, so I just got some free coffee. Shipadick.com decided to send me some stickers and a coupon for some free giant cardboard dicks to be shipped to someone, so that's nice, I guess. The top bribe award so far goes to Rome Adventure Company, who sent in 2 camping chairs, a cooler, and a rugged case with a lid organizer. I'll probably mount this permanently on the land speed trailer, so I'll slap one of the stickers on the side for that. For now, it's going to hold all of the stickers until they go on the car. A few people decided to send in hundreds of these stickers, so we're full up on these guys. No need to send more. These are some of my favorite stickers, all good, all going to get prime placement on the car. I'll go over all the stickers in detail later when they go on the car. In the meantime, if you have more stickers to send in, the address is in the description, or you can click on the link below the address and just upload whatever image file you have along with $18, and I will print out the sticker for you and put it on the car. I got some pretty good ones from that so far, some pretty weird ones too, but weird is good. This job is kind of odd. I can see that number that says 250,000 people watched my video, but that connection is kind of one way. Sometimes it feels weirdly lonely talking to 250,000 people, but a lot of the stickers came with handwritten letters about how much you enjoy the videos and what your sticker means and why you want it on the car, and they've all been pretty great. I'm not the best at responding to YouTube comments, and I'm not going to be able to write back to everyone who sent in something. It took me over 3 hours just to open the mail, but I do read most of the comments and all of the letters, and I appreciate your thoughts and sharing your stories with me. So keep them coming. We have plenty of room on the car.